Great. Well, thank you everybody for coming tonight. Really appreciate you being here. I'm Brian Simpson. I'm editor of the magazine here at the school, and I want to say how great it is to see so many people come out to help us celebrate this issue. And I do have to note that we have a much larger crowd than we did with the death issue for some reason. I don't know. I don't know why. I think maybe it was like a live event for the death issue was just a hard sell for us. So I'm going to be very brief. We have some much more interesting speakers to come, but I did want to start off just by thanking everybody on the magazine team who makes this special issue and every issue possible. And I'm going to run through their names too. If you could, when I say your name, please just put your hand up, and so you can be recognized. Starting off, our associate editor, Mary Alcia Kutchik, Sue DePasquale, our consulting editor, Jackie Powder, our writer, art director, Robert Ollinger, and who also is the mastermind of these events. Thank you, Robert. Conrad Crispino, Ann Stiller, our copy editor. And on the web team, David Croft, Spencer Greer, Mike Riley, Ranjan Vadlamani, and a special thanks to Tim Parsons, who's our director of public affairs, who has been feeding me story ideas for the magazine for 13 years, and unfortunately is moving on to the Carey School of Business. So congrats, Tim. We will miss you. And also for today's event, Lauren Haney and Angela Jaroszewski. And one more thank you to, this one goes to Darcy Meadows in the Office of External Affairs. When we were kicking ideas around for a special issue last fall, Darcy said, "How about an issue on food?" And I was like, "Of course, yes." And when we put an all call out for ideas to faculty, we had more faculty and students. We had more than 100 responses. So I think food definitely resonates with the school and with the mission. One more thank you too. I'm the thank you guy. Thanks to Dean Clegg, Josh Else, and Susan Sperry for their support of the magazine. It means a lot to me personally, especially with this issue, because I can say that before this issue, my only contribution to the American food system was as a fry cook at Popeyes. So I know Bob Lawrence enjoys that story. So again, thanks, and as promised, more interesting speakers to come. And the first one is Dean Clegg. Dean?
Thank you, Brian. So, you're not surprised. Well, I'm Mike Clegg. I'm the dean of the school. You're not surprised that when Brian invited me to this, he also gave me a script of everything that I'm supposed to say. And so I never read things. I don't know if I can read in public, but I'm really going to try. But I do want to say thank you to Brian and everybody on the magazine team. And I remember when I became dean, I think the first theme issue we had was Africa, and the second one was Baltimore. As you said, there was one on death, a little bit of a downer, but it's what we're about in public health is counting deaths, preventing deaths, and that was the first live event we had, and it was incredibly moving. We've had special issues on malaria, technology, and I saw you had a little sign up there to ask people for suggestions for what our next theme issue should be. So seems like, food, maybe drink. I don't know. So we'll see. But let Brian know. And the magazine, I'm really proud of the work of the magazine team. You guys do a great job, and they try to keep me as far away from it as possible. You're laughing, but you know that that's really true. But I read it in typescript. I see it before in galleys, not even in galleys, before it goes to press, and I'm always amazed and shocked when I see the final edition, because I've read it already, but to see the impact of the design and the art, it's so thoughtful and so well done. So my compliments to everybody who's involved. I think food was a great topic, and hats off to Darcy if she's here. There she is in the back. It was a great topic. And in public health, when we think about big picture population-based issues, it has a way of changing how you think about things. So as a physician, for example, for many years I worried about prescribing too many antibiotics, too broad spectrum antibiotics, and causing antibiotic resistance. And then I came here and learned about the work of our faculty that, in fact, the antibiotics that we eat in our food and the antibiotics that farm animals eat have a huge impact on the development of antibiotic resistance. So, and it's that way about food. We know that many of the chronic diseases that affect the world that people die from now, the number one cause of death, if you will, in the world is high blood pressure. that is essentially a nutritional problem. There's physical activity and other things, but it's essentially a nutritional problem. And we can think about heart disease, and then instead of overnutrition, undernutrition. So this is a topic that really crosses all the issues we care about in public health. When I first came on the faculty, I was really lucky to work with a great doctoral student, a guy named John He, who came from China and was interested in high blood pressure. And he had found a population called the Yi people who lived up in remote mountain villages that did not have high blood pressure. Essentially, if you live long enough in Western society, you get high blood pressure. And overall, about 25%. And he found that people there didn't have it. But when they moved down to the cities and changed their diet and the way they lived, it was just like the Western populations. And that was really my first introduction to the importance of food and nutrition. And David Page, who's not here, who was the MPH director at the time, was always interested in nutrition, and he was the editor of Clinical Nutrition, and he got me to edit a few issues of that. And so early on, when I got introduced to public health, I got introduced to the importance of food and nutrition. Now, diet is only one part of the puzzle. What we eat, we have to understand how the food's produced, how the food system works, how it affects what we eat, and how it affects the environment. And in our school, the group that has dealt with these issues the most is the Center for a Livable Future, and it was founded by Bob Lawrence, who is professor of environmental health sciences, and Polly Walker back in 1996. And I was working with Bob on another project when I was in the School of Medicine about we were working on a book, actually, and he started talking about the Center for a Livable Future, and I can remember thinking, what the hell is this guy talking about? And the whole issues of sustainability and the way that we live is affected by systems and how we affect the environment around us. So CLF is something that's had a huge impact not only in our school, it's changed the way that we think about problems. It's had an effect outside the entire, I think, U.S. policy. And Bob and his team have been on the Hill to talk about the Farm Bill and other things. So I just want to say thank you again for the magazine. I think this is a magazine that you can share with friends and family. People who don't necessarily understand what public health is or don't care about public health, they'll care about what's in this magazine. So, and you represent us, I think there's 42,000 people who get the magazine in print, and I don't know how many electronically. How many? Thousands, okay. And so I want to thank you for what you do, not only for our school, but for getting the message of public health out there. And one of the things that Bob and the CLF team did was introduce us to the notion of community-supported agriculture. And like many of you here, I participate in CSA, and it's great food, and we're fortunate to have that as part of our school. And if you participate in the CSA, you get emails from Joan Norman, who's the owner, and she and her husband of One Straw Farm. And Joan, would you please come up and say a few words?
You might be sorry you gave me the microphone because I love to talk. First, some of you are already CSA members. Can I see roughly how many? Great, so you know who I am. But the one who really grows it would be my husband, Drew. He's sitting here. Most people never get to meet him because I don't let him off the farm very often. So we have been farming since 1983. We've had a vegetable farm, been growing organically since then. We, in the late 90s, decided we had to do something different than just, selling wholesale, and we started a CSA. We now have about 45 drop sites. CLF has one here. I said it's actually our third largest pickup. It's our first pickup site where we drop things off. It's the largest one. It's the third largest out of all our sites. Have two farmers markets who are slightly larger, which is not surprising. So we're very grateful to all of you for participating. So years ago, what happened was, and the CSA developed because we were selling to Whole Foods and to Alberts, and our produce was going up and down the East Coast to North Carolina, Texas, Chicago, Florida. It was everywhere. And my neighbors kept saying, well, where can we get your food? And I was like, I don't know. So this idea of a CSA came up, which is a little different than farmers markets, because back in the late 90s, there was only 2 farmers markets. And that still wasn't convenient for my neighbors. So that's how the CSA sort of developed for us, where I could deliver things in bulk. I got paid for it ahead of time, so I wasn't borrowing money from the bank. I could give my customers a better price. And it was sort of a mutually beneficial, agreement for both of us. That's how that started, and that's been going along, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger, and more people and farmers are participating. I think it's wonderful. So a couple years ago, I had been threatening to get pigs. Big surprise. And I went to a friend of mine and came home with 2 pigs in the back of a pickup truck in watermelon bins with, pallets on top to keep them from jumping out. So that was the first 2 pigs that we named very quickly Pork and Chop. I wanted everybody to know what they were. This was not, going to be the family pets forever. So we had those 2 pigs. They were delicious. All the family and friends who ate them were like, well, where can we get these? And all of a sudden I'm like, well, the only place you could get those pigs was from me. And suddenly, once again, we had to start to figure out how could we feed our family and friends. We wanted the pigs to be grown correctly. There's no GMOs, there's no antibiotics. They're outside. You can see the pictures. They're outside playing in the field. We let them go in the woods and they can eat acorns and those kind of things. So the pigs have become part of the whole process for us. We segregated a part of the farm. It was about 2 acres in the back of the farm that we were having difficulty growing produce on because the deer like to eat what was ever in that field. Funny, the deer are not eating the pigs. That hasn't been a problem at all. So all along, that's kind of how we've done is we don't necessarily go out with any intention, but as things develop, we certainly are agreeable to growing things for the people around us because it is really so much fun. I love food. I love selling it. I love growing it. Well, I really don't grow it. I like getting it to people, and I love when people eat it. So it makes me very happy and makes my job very easy to do things like this. I said, now, when I go home, I'm really excited. I had to ask for a couple extra copies of these magazines. My father-in-law was in charge of the Department of Immunology at Hopkins. He retired several years ago. I get to go home and say, look where I am. My son would be here tonight, but he is in school still, and I decided that I'd like him to continue with that, quote, A average that he seems to have started the year off with. And so he couldn't join us tonight. But I thank you for having us. I love that you eat our food, and I hope you continue. I love the magazine.
Thank you so much, Joan. And our next speaker is Desmond Flag, who has a personal story that's in the magazine, and he'll relate it to us now.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you all very much for coming. My name is Desmond Flag. I'm a 5th year PhD candidate in Department of Health Policy and Management. Just like to thank you, Brian, also. Thank you, Dean Clegg and Dr. Lawrence, for this opportunity to speak this evening. I'm going to talk about 3 things. I'm going to talk about the environment, I'm going to talk about money, I'm going to talk about family, and talk about how all of these things relate to the food that we eat. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, in the deep South, and I was overweight as a kid, perhaps obese, and just the environment of Southern cuisine and being there in the inner city left me at a weight which I was uncomfortable at. And I remember just had this stark anxiety about my weight and just bullying in school. And at the age of 10, I moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan. And before moving, I remember I had this just intense anxiety I was going to get made fun of because of my weight. And remember that specifically. But much to my surprise, from moving to an inner city, deep South environment to the suburbs of Ann Arbor, Michigan, my body weight changed. I actually became a healthy weight. And through no fault of my own, I didn't do anything differently, just the food which was available there. From in the schools, we had healthy school lunch, so the whole cuisine changed. And that's what really kind of developed a passion for me for understanding how the environment affected our weight. The next thing we'll talk about is how money influences the food that we eat. I did my undergraduate degree at Columbia University in New York City, and after graduating, I worked as a social worker. I dealt with clients who are on public assistance who had problems with substance abuse, so my altruistic interest in social work. My brother, who was 2 years younger, after he graduated from undergrad, did marketing for Pepsi. And I remember my apartment after graduating was in Manhattan. You can imagine a social worker salary there. And so it was very, very humble means. But after he graduated, he did marketing for Pepsi. He had his own company car, own company credit card. And so just very different incomes. And so just with myself struggling as a social worker, there was just a limit on the types of healthful foods that I could eat. And so really just came acquainted with how your income can affect your food choices. The third thing I'm going to talk about is family. I'm a single father. I have a daughter who's 4 years old. And before my daughter was born, we were talking about just public health interventions at school. I was doing my master's at Hunter. I remember we were talking about things such as, the checkout aisle in stores, how when, mothers and fathers, would check out and they had all the candy placed right there and how, it was easy access for children. I was, before my daughter was born, I was like, well, it's just a parent's responsibility, just keep your kids in line and do all that. But after becoming a parent, I realized exactly how difficult that was. So I'm trying to get things out of the cart and put them there. And then my daughter's, grabbing things. And we want to be a great father. So I'm like, sure, sweetie, have some. But you just kind of understood that context there. So those are just three different ways in how social factors influences the food that we eat. Your environment. I didn't do anything differently from when I moved from the deep South Atlanta to Ann Arbor, Michigan. It was just the environment changed my weight. Income, it takes money to eat healthily, and also your, we have environment, we have income, we have family structure. Nearly 3 in 4 Black children are born to unmarried parents, and just the prevalence of single parenthood is on the rise. So those are just 3 ways in which food affects the way in which social factors affects our access to food, and food affects our body weight. So I'm just very, very thankful to be, those experiences fueled a passion in me to return to school and to help work on these issues. And I would just like to thank Dean Clegg and Dr. Lawrence for the excellent work which we're doing to protect health and save lives, millions upon millions at a time. All right?
Thank you so much. Great. Thank you, Desmond. That's fantastic. Okay. And our final speaker today is, everybody knows him, Bob Lawrence, Director of Center for Livable Future.
Thanks very much. This is a great issue, and it was a lot of fun to respond to Brian as he put it together and to participate. A number of my colleagues and I had an opportunity to interact in the presentation of this now. So this is really the slide I wanted to show. Wendell Berry received the gold medal from President Obama a year and a half ago, the highest civilian honor in the United States. He's a philosopher, a farmer, a writer, has written many books, a poet, and an ardent advocate to protect the environment and to have a more sustainable food system. He lives in Kentucky, and a few years ago he was asked, well, what do I, so few of us are farmers anymore, like Joan and her husband. We don't know what the food system is all about. He said, actually, the slide I wanted up here was, if you eat, you're involved in agriculture. But that's okay. This is a good one, too. There's no connection between food and health. This was part of why Mike, back in 1993 and 94, didn't understand, or 96, what I was talking about with regard to the food system and the Center for a Livable Future. People are fed by a food industry which pays no attention to health, healed by a health industry that pays no attention to food. Joan mentioned the CSA. I think it was probably 7 or 8 years ago that Leanna contacted you. Leanna Pitkovitz, who was at the CLF at the time. When she left for a position at Homewood, Brent Kim, who I think is here tonight, picked up the reins and then turned it over to Mia Salucci. And we have had an active engagement with the CSA. The first year, I encountered a little bit of bureaucratic resistance in the housekeeping staff and the facilities people. The school, understandably, has a rule that you can't allow every Tom, Dick, and Harry to come in and set up shop in the common places of the school to sell their wares. I said, but this is a project of an academic center, it doesn't matter. I decided not to go over this particular person's head. Well, actually, it was the year you... No. So for the first year of the CSA, the Tuesday afternoon drops were in my office that was back in the corner of the second floor. And Mike, as he's already indicated, was an early adopter. He had ordered a share. And at the end of the season, he said to me, why are we picking food up in your office? Finally, I said, well, we weren't allowed to do it anywhere else. He said, the guest parking spot next to my designated parking spot in the underground garage would be perfect. So we want to thank you, Mike, for making it possible. Now, this is what happens every Tuesday afternoon. This is 30 seconds of a CSA. And Mike's car is usually back where the wheelchairs are. So you can see it's a lot of activity, a lot of great food, and then when it's all over and done with, Joan didn't say this, but for every 10 shares, she will donate a share to the drop-off point, and we have had a relationship with the Franciscan Center for the last, Allison, what is it, 6 years? 3 or 4 years. And so whatever people, when it's the 5th or 6th week of kale, sometime all the kale doesn't go. And so the kale and other things get taken over to the Franciscan Center, where several hundred wholesome meals are served every day to people who are unable to afford, as Desmond said, high quality food. So this is just a series of shots of the kind of produce that comes from the One Straw Farm. Mike Milley has taken these photographs, and not only are the photographs beautiful, but what makes them beautiful is this extraordinary variety of healthy, wholesome, wonderful food produced by the Normans. So when you get good food, healthy food, and you have it delivered right to the dean's parking lot, what's not to like about that? And we are delighted to have been part of this, and it's been a remarkable way of getting people to then engage in some of the bigger issues that Dean Clegg and Joan and Desmond alluded to. The way in which social determinants drive the kind of food that we all have access to, the way in which a good diet drives our health status, either for the good or for the poor. And so to have a magazine issue devoted to what is at the heart of the work of the CLF is indeed a huge satisfaction to us. And I want to thank you, Brian, and all your team for a great job.
Thank you, Bob. Just a few quick notes to wrap up. You'll notice some cards asking for ideas, suggestions for the magazine, and please do shoot us an email at editor@jhsph.edu. We really see that any successful magazine is really a conversation of ideas and topics and matters of import, and I think that's especially true in a public health magazine. So as we go forward this year, we're going to be doing a redesign of the magazine, and we hope to make it better and sort of more essential reading to advance the school's mission. So please share your ideas, and we'll be doing a survey in a few weeks as well. So you may be hearing from us. So again, thank you very much, and please enjoy your food. Thanks. And can I ask the magazine team, to everybody who works on the magazine, print, web, everything, please come forward too, just to come on up. Thank you. Enjoy the food.